It's December 8th, 2018. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska. Today I'm going to be making a leather ammo pouch for a 12 gauge shotgun. This is used by trap and skeet shooters to hold extra shells, and it hangs from their belt. I made it for a 2-inch belt, and I'm making it out of this Hermann Oak drum dried brown leather. I'm going to I cut the main pieces down to about 5 ounces, and then the gusset has been cut down to 3 to 4. And then the little loops are probably about 2 to 3 ounce. So this is what the pouch looks like. There's a loop that you run the belt through. There's the gussets, and then the loops there to hold the shotgun shells and the face of it. So basically you take a box of shotgun shells and you can place it inside like that. And then there's a spot here on the side to hold 2 extra shells on the outside. I used polyester tiger thread to stitch this together. I did hand stitch this. I'm not skilled enough yet with my class 3 sewing machine to sew gussets in, but I do know how to do it by hand, so that's why I'm sticking to what I know, because I'm making this for a friend and I need to get it done this weekend. Also, I used my new class 14 splitter to cut the gusset down, as well as to skive down the loop right here. This part right here is thinner than the other part. It's still all the same piece of leather, but basically I'm going to put one end into the splitter, run it up to the line I have drawn, then put it in reverse and back it out, and then just cut that little piece of leather off, and it made it perfect to be able to fold this piece of leather over, stitch it down, and make the loop that way. So this is a lot of fun to make. I hope you enjoy watching it. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska. Have a nice day. Here's a poster board I've cut out for a pattern. It's got a front piece that's going to come over the front of the shell box, and then this will be the back piece. This is going to flip up and over and make a loop for a belt to pass through. I'll run a line of stitching across there. And then this is the gusset. I made it just a little bit long to give myself some room to play in case I need to make some adjustments once the stitching starts. And then I'll make a little 2 loops right here on the side to hold 2 shotgun shells. This is going to be the front panel of the project, and I'm just using my CS Osborne scratch-all to trace around, and now I'm just using the small railroad track anvil that I have to hold down the larger piece, and I'm going to do the same thing with the same scratch-all. Now that I have the pieces traced out with the scratch-all, I'm going to take my craft tool knife and go around the corners and get those cut out first before I go with the rotary cutter and cut out the straightaways. That way the lines look a little cleaner when the piece finally gets cut out. The rotary cutter and this craft tool knife are still my go-to knives. I don't have anything fancy to cut leather out with. I think you can get both these at Tandy Leather or at like a Hobby Lobby type store. Now I'm going to split down the gusset here. I'm cutting it down to 3 to 4 ounce. Again, this is drum-dried Hermann Oak vegetable tan leather. And now that I have all the pieces cut out, I'm going to mock them up here against the shotgun shell box to kind of get an idea of how things are fitting and make sure there aren't any glaring mistakes that would cause me to have to cut a new piece out. And that's how the shotgun shells are going to mock up against the side of the gusset. And this is the back piece that is going to be stitched to the back, and then you fold over the top. Now what I'm about to do is I'm going to skive down the top portion of the back panel where you just saw me folding it over. I'm going to use the splitter, and I'm going to run it all the way up to that line I just made. Then I'm going to put the machine in reverse and back it out. That way, that top portion is a little thinner than the bottom portion. It makes it easier to fold over that top for the belt loop. Now that little flap that's hanging down needs to be cut off. So I just took the rubber cutting mat, and I'm using the side of it with the rotary cutter to slice that portion off. And then I'm going to grab a pair of needle nose pliers to help lift up the little lip that's left over and go back through with the craft tool knife and shave that part off. Now I'm just mocking up the shotgun shells where I want them. I have a little piece of 2 to 3 ounce leather. It's the same leather that I've been using for this entire project, cut from the same hide. I just cut it down with the leather splitter. Now I'm running my number 2 edger rather around the front panel. And I'll also run it around the back panel as well, and the gusset. And I'll probably, I will be using the fine edge tool from Craft Tool for the leather strap that's going to be used to hold the shotgun shells. That edger, it cuts a little finer edge than the number 2 there. The number 2 is a little too aggressive for a piece that thin. There it is, the fine edge tool, and it just takes the corner off. It helps make it so I can slick that up. Now I have the front panel here. The person I'm making this wants their name on it, so I'm going to use this protractor. I already put some marks with a pencil on the front there to center it up. And now I'm just getting the arc right, lining up the stamps, and then I'm just going to put them in the arbor press and stamp them out. Now I'm just going to start the sanding process. I've edged all my edges. Now I'm going to hit all the edges with 220 grit sandpaper. Then I'll come back, wet the edges down, and hit them with 400 grit sandpaper. And I wet the 400 grit sandpaper as well, and it helps get a nice smooth surface on the edges. Now I'm putting a stitching groove on the back panel where I want to fold over the top for the belt loop. Now I'm using my handheld craft tool groover. It cuts a channel into the leather, and lately I've been liking to use my freehand grooving tool versus the one with the edge guide on it. I don't know, it's just something I've been liking to do lately. And now I'm cutting the holes, or punching the holes rather, down that groove I just cut for the stitching line. Now that the holes have been punched, I'm going back down the back side of the same panel, and I'm just following the stitching holes that were made by the pricking iron. And now I'm stitching the belt loop down. I have a stitching pony that I'm using. It's just a cheap Tandy stitching pony. And I got these little clips from like Office Depot or someplace like that to help hold the flap down until I can get this stitched all the way across. And here's what it looks like now that I have the stitching finished for the belt loop. It's wide enough for a 2-inch belt to pass through. And now I'm going to punch my stitching holes for the loops that'll hold the 2 shotgun shells on the side of the case. Or the side of the gusset, rather. The stitching line that holds that down isn't very long. I'm going to stitch the center of this loop first to hold that down, and then I'm going to come back with the shotgun shells. I'll place them underneath the strap and then loop the strap around each shell to mock up and get an idea of where I need the other end of that to be stitched into the gusset. Once I have that down, I'm going to take my pricking iron here, I'm going to push it up against the side of the shell, and I'll drive it through and cut those holes. Once these holes are cut, I'm just going to come back through again, stitch that side down, and the process is the same for the other side. I left extra leather on the ends just in case I need to make adjustments. It's easy to cut leather away, but you can't add leather once you've cut it off. So I'd rather have too much than not enough. Now that the strap is stitched down, it'll hold the shells in like that, and I'm going to proceed to cut the ends off here. I have a piece of scrap leather that I have underneath the knife here, and I'll just cut that off. Now I'm running my scratch all down, or my compass rather, to make my stitch lines for the back panel. And I'm going to make the stitching groove with the same freehand stitch groover. And then I'm going to punch my holes. Once I have all the holes punched, I've punched the holes there on the gusset. I'm counting all the holes on the gusset, and I'll count all the holes on the front and back panel and make sure I have the exact number of holes needed so they line up when I start stitching. I've also left a little bit of extra leather on the gusset for the same reason I did on the strap to hold the shells to the gusset, just because in case there's a mistake or something, I'd rather have the extra leather there to cut away at the end than not enough and find out that I'm short when I get right to the end. Now I've already stitched the gusset to the back panel with the belt loop, and now I'm working on finishing up the front panel. I've also moved into the kitchen because it's winter time and it is extremely cold, and the sun's gone down by now, so the temperature's dropped even more, and I finally had enough out in the garage. So I moved into the kitchen where it's warmer. Now I finished the stitching up to the extra portion of the leather on the gusset, and now I'm just cutting the excess piece off. And now I'm burnishing that new edge. I ran an edged tool down that as well, rounded it off, and slicked it up. Now on the beginning of these stitches on the panels, both at the beginning and at the end, I always loop the thread around up and over the top of the edge there to help lock it down. And once I've made that loop over the edge there, I will back stitch about 2 stitches and then cut the threads off. I'm going to repeat this process on both sides. Now the stitching is completely finished. I'll cut these threads off. I will go back and take a lighter and burn the edges off on those threads. Now I'm going to make sure that the shell box fits. I believe that shooters mostly will tear off the tabs on that cardboard box when they have it in there, so they have access to the shells. And there's the 2 extra shells on the side. But they'll just loop their belt through there and have access to their shells when they're on the line shooting. So thanks for watching. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska. Have a nice day.